Cool. Well, I think it's the best I can do. We're recording a podcast now.
Okay, let's do it.
Everything's going. How you doing?
Oh, we're going. Hey, man.
Yeah.
Good to be here in the van.
I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me. Welcome to Canada.
Yeah, thank you.
First
well,
time.
do you want to talk about where we are right now?
Yeah, we're about 5 minutes from my house. The town we're in technically is Uxbridge, Ontario, but I live in a small town just south of here called Claremont that doesn't even have a stoplight. It's so small.
Yeah.
But we drove out to this beautiful little parking lot.
Very clean.
Take my daughter here on hikes.
Yeah.
And we're going to chat about art, I think. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I guess the way I've been starting all these things is it's like the goal of it is not to talk about technique. It's not to talk about how to get in the industry. It's not to talk about how to learn anatomy. It's about like why. It's like the why of things.
Cool. I like it.
And I guess it's like the reason I want to talk to you specifically is mainly because like you're constantly putting yourself out there on the internet. You're constantly doing these videos where you're like doing things that are actually very scary. Like you're doing public speaking and you're doing I guess art education and performing the art itself.
Right.
And I guess I'm always curious about people who manage to be able to do that and not have like existential crises every day.
I have I have many.
Do you wanna light this, by the way?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Am I gonna put my hand on fire here?
I hope not.
Okay. Woo! Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So, I have many faults, but one fault I don't have. Are we good? We're good?
Oh yeah, no.
Is many people are afraid of public speaking. I've never been afraid of it.
Yeah.
I've gung-ho gone up to the top of the class, like in the front of the class, and done my speech.
Right.
I've never been afraid of it. I guess like inherently, I'm not an actor or anything, but inherently I've always liked performing.
Yeah.
Because not that I've always been good at it, but I've always liked it. And I've always felt like, I've only realized this later, but I've always really valued communication.
Right.
And one of the coolest ways to communicate is when you have an audience looking at you. Like it's all about you at that point. So I've always liked that idea that I can get up there, and I'm thinking about grade school, like I can get up there in front of my class and give them a speech that I had like pre-written and rehearsed, and like I can like I can bring this thing home, So my YouTube now is an extension of that.
Yeah.
So they're pretty meticulously planned. Like even if I'm improvising in a bit, I'll record lines 10 times into the mic. I'll say the line 10 different ways, pick the best one, and it's all in the name of good communication. So
absolutely.
That answers the existential crisis part. I guess I am lucky that I actually don't really face that internal crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But like I said, I have other faults.
Well, I mean, again, when I meet people that have been successful on YouTube in some way, I think it's like I really don't believe it's just luck. I really don't believe it's just like you making a viral video and then a lot of people watch it. It's like there's something else. There's like a consistency and like an honesty there that actually makes somebody more likely to be successul.
Yeah. Well, I know what's funny with my YouTube channel. I've never had a viral video. Yeah. I desperately want one.
Yeah.
I've never had one. Like, I remember, I think it's the most recent one, James Gurney posted something a few months ago. He was painting an airplane. Yeah. And like in a couple days, he had like 20 million views.
Right.
I'm like, that's so cool, man. I wish I could have a video like that, but no, never. Yeah. My first video ever to cross 1 million views just happened a few weeks ago. Yeah. And that was a slow and steady climb.
Yeah. Congrats.
No, thanks, man. But definitely not viral. So I can't remember what your original. Consistency. Yeah. So I've always gotten there with consistency, and the same is true with like getting better at art. Right? It just in case of YouTube, you put something out there, you gauge audience reaction based on comments, and if people. Generally, if people have learned from your video, they'll tell you. Like, people are very generous with their comments. If you've been generous to them and they benefit, they'll usually tell you that it's helped them. So, gauging comments and then tailoring how I make my lessons based on what I feel is getting the best response. Right. 10 years later now has led me to this point. I think my first YouTube video was 2010 or 2009 even.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I find that, like, a lot of people that I know that might not feel comfortable in putting themselves out there, it's like it's not like you wait and prepare. Like, I mean, we were just talking about this before we started the podcast.
Yeah,
but I have this impulse to prepare to the nth degree.
Right.
Like, I had this impulse to get a much nicer van. Mm-hmm. Like, these cameras that I'm using are 10 years old, and this is like all this stuff is hand-me-down. This table is from Home Depot.
Right.
And I guess I was like waiting, and I was wanting to feel like I had everything just right before starting.
Yeah. there's a industry term for that. Although the industry is the sound industry. You know what it's called?
What is it?
Gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah.
It's an audio head thing where with audio, as you can imagine, there's so much gear. You can buy think microphones. You can buy a microphone for $3,000 if you want. Yeah. So anyway, a lot of people setting up their studios will not record a single damn thing until they have every best mic and every best preamp and all this gear stuff, right?
Right.
And I went through. I'm an audio hobbyist myself, so I learned pretty much actually through audio because I can't afford a $3,000 mic. I can afford maybe an $800 mic would be my top end, which I actually have one in my house. I learned that your output almost has nothing to do with the quality of your gear. Yeah. Almost nothing. Right. There are certain entry-level things. You need some gear to perform, but you don't need a table built of red oak. This table's fine.
Yeah, perfectly.
What would a better table do for you? Nothing.
Aesthetically, it might look nicer.
Maybe. Right? Which is a splash in the lake, right?
Well, and a red oak table would be less convenient than this.
Exactly. Yeah. It'd be heavy. Sure, it would look nice, but it'd be heavy. But, the idea is you use what you have. Again, the audio industry, people have a saying, what's the best microphone? Right. The one you have.
Yeah.
That's the best microphone.
Right.
And it's the same with, your situation with creating art or putting stuff on YouTube is do what you can do right now.
Yeah.
And then, what's the word? Pivot or react from there.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where you stand otherwise. The thing about wanting perfection is, first of all, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Perfection doesn't exist. But even if it did, you'll never get there before you start trying anything.
Absolutely.
You just can't. Sorry, I'll get off the topic in a second. Even with the audio thing, if you gave someone the best microphones in the world and then said, okay, here you go, are they going to record a good album? Probably no. I would still say no because they don't have the experience.
Absolutely. Well, and again, I'm finding that success is way more of a healthy relationship with failure rather than, a complete competence or mastery over your skill or... with all in a metaphorical sense, your sword being super sharp.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say, failure, I was thinking about this a few years ago in a book project I had, just doing some, creative writing, and failure to me is just navigating a maze.
Yeah.
A failure is you hitting a wall.
Right.
It's okay, I hit the wall, that's great, that I know there's a wall there.
Right.
Let's go this way.
Absolutely.
And the thing where I think people stumble on, well, I guess two things. People will stumble, on not even going anywhere, kind of the perfection syndrome, where they won't even start, due to fear. That's mistake number one. Mistake number two is when they hit that wall, they give up.
Yeah.
That's mistake number two. If you can avoid those two mistakes, start, then hit the wall, because you will. Yeah. Everyone will. And then make sure you don't give up there, and then move to, if it's a maze, go somewhere else. Go right instead of left.
Right. And
see if there's a wall there. And maybe there won't be, or there probably will be further down the road, but at least you'll have navigated around that one.
Well, I found that everyone I know does struggle with that kind of stuff. At every level of success, whether you're worth $100 million or $10,000 or whatever,
right.
Those barriers, they happen at all stages,
Yes.
And again, it's like a healthy relationship with failure.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it, man. Yeah. It is, because like you said, Court Jones told me something 12 years ago. I was hanging out with him in Court Jones. I talk about him all the time with you because I know you know him.
Yeah.
Hey, Court, you watching this? I don't know. You're not watching
I'll send it to you.
Yeah. He said, we were driving in San Diego, and he's like, we were talking about art improvement. Yeah. And Court was like, he said something like, really the way I look at it is, improvement is simply trading your current set of problems for a new set of problems. Yeah. And he's totally right. That has stuck with me for 12 years now.
Yeah.
Always you have problems.
Right.
Even Richard Schmid, the late Richard Schmid, in his book Alla Prima, he was there's a beautiful little paragraph. He's like, after I think 65 years of painting, he said, the thing that keeps me up at night is edges.
Yeah.
He can draw. He's got drawing down. He's got color down. But the thing that troubles him is edges.
Yeah.
And that was always a reminder to me, you can be a Richard Schmid and still have something that you are pining for or
Absolutely.
Working towards.
Yeah, well, and even then, it's Richard Schmid might struggle to draw from his head,
Right. Or he probably would.
Yeah. And it's I think that's another big part of this stuff is being confident in what you're good and bad at.
Yeah.
Being completely aware that if you're a brilliant landscape or oil painter, you might not be strong at drawing from light or from your head or from on digital or something.
Yeah. I think the goal, at least over the years for me, I've taken stock of my strengths and weaknesses, and when I was younger, my goal was to exercise the strengths to keep them strong, but shore up the weaknesses.
Yeah.
So, to raise the tide for all boats, whatever the hell that saying is. Now it's like, not that I don't want to get better, but if I know where I'm weak, some ways I've learned to circumvent it. So like now some things you can't be weak at. Like if I'm drawing a head and I don't know the structure of the eye, well, you got to fix that. You got to know the structure of the eye before you can draw a head properly. But there's certain things like I know, for example, that I'm not the best renderer in the world. I can do it, but I'm not the best. So if I want my piece to look rendered, like I have learned what that means for me.
Yeah.
I have come to peace with the fact that I'll never be like Alma Tandema's old artist renders the crap out of it. Yeah.
I've seen his stuff.
Like I can't do that.
Yeah.
But if I want my stuff to feel like that, I know how I can get there in my way.
Right.
So like I've learned to work with myself on the things that I'm, I guess, weaker with.
Absolutely.
And part of his personality too, man. Like I'm not sure, I may not have like the full rendering chops, but like I have other things that contribute just as much to a painting.
Yeah.
And you lean into that. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I feel like
drinking coffee here.
Totally fine. I mean, people are like, I'm always looking at the trip that I'm doing right now, driving across the United States, and trying to find the purpose in it. And I really do believe that doing it in the way that I have been doing it has made me a much better artist than. So I have to keep restarting the cameras because they reset every 20 minutes.
Okay.
But so like doing this travel in the way that I've been traveling has made me a way better artist, but not necessarily a better draftsman.
Right.
And what I mean by that is I have a clear idea of what I want to say.
Yeah.
Way better. I know what I want to say more accurately than I ever could be fine by like learning how to draw really well.
Sure. And I've seen evidence of that, Christian, because I mean, I didn't know you before this. I mean, except for online, like from a few months. Actually, probably a year ago, I first talked to you. But anyway, my point is, just chatting with you last night, went out for dinner, and now like you're able to put thoughts into cohesive sentences that like I couldn't do when I was your age. I'm like 14 years older than you, and only recently I'm like, have I found some clarity on things? Right. And you're here like spitting out these lines. I'm like, yeah, you nailed it. Like that's it.
It's very kind of you.
And like that's. Not to steal the words from your mouth, but like that's where the art is. It's like you putting out what you believe in succinct thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, and we were talking about it last night where like learning to draw is like learning your punctuation, or it's like in music learning your scales. It's like you're learning how to say something, not necessarily what to say.
That's exactly right.
And I feel like a bunch of people get caught up in the how to say things with art way more than they probably should.
Right. And then it's kind of like the whole gear acquisition thing. Yeah. They put off, ask themselves, what am I trying to say?
Right.
And more if they just stack the cards and like, how do I say it?
Absolutely.
I remember my first, I was an unpaid intern for a while, and that's where people who know my YouTube videos have, that's me, that unpaid intern character, that's me in my earlier days. Anyway, but I was a happy unpaid intern. It was actually a good experience for me. But my mentor at the time, the guy I was interning for, very good artist, he was starting his own little studio. That's why I was his unpaid intern. He couldn't afford to pay me because he wasn't making money yet. But he was a very good artist. And I remember asking him, like, I was taking classes with him and he was teaching me. And I asked him a question like something about, to that degree, to that extent, like what do you struggle with art now? And he's like, you know what, Marco, the hardest thing is not learning the tools. It's where I'm at now. This is him talking. It's where I'm at now. What do I do with all this?
Yeah, right.
And that, he was starting a venture in his own studio, which actually ended up not succeeding. He had to close shop.
Right.
Showed up one morning, door was locked, and got a call. He's like, yeah, we're stopping.
Yeah.
So, that was a failure. And at the time, he was a totally professional artist, like amazing draftsman, still is an amazing draftsman. And those were his challenges of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's like you can be an amazing artist, but not necessarily a great businessman.
I'm not a good businessman.
Well, but I think it's always a strange thing. It's like accepting your weaknesses and trying to move past them, and also not having your ego hurt because you're not good at something.
Yeah.
Like I have friends that are way better at drawing than me, and they will always be way better at drawing than me, And the right way to look at it isn't to be like, oh, I'm going to try and like become better than them. It's like, oh, I'm happy that they're really great. Apply to money or
so just to not necessarily push back on that, but I had a bit of an opposite experience when I first started, in that I was never really, like when I was young, I was never really the best at anything.
Yeah.
Like, I was never the worst at anything, but I was always like somewhere in the middle of the pack. And I think, if I think back, I had a bit of an underdog sort of syndrome where with certain things, and art was one of them, where I'm like, you know what, fuck this. Like, I want to be really good at this.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be better than all you assholes.
Yeah.
And that drove me for a long time. Right. Doesn't drive me today. Today, I don't have those thoughts. I have somehow grown up past them. But definitely my first instinct when I was first learning art, I started when I was 19. So this is, I mean, I'm 39 now, so 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember having that thought, like, I learned that it was possible to learn art because, you know, you go life drawing and you can learn anatomy, you can learn about gesture, you can learn about form. Once I knew that you can learn it, I was like, I had a fire under me. I'm like, you know what? I am going to be good at this. Like, I'm going to get good at this. And I'm going to, I felt like I had what it takes to put in the time. And if I can learn this, well, damn it, I'm going to learn it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Not that I think I'm better than all you assholes, but, but I feel like I'm at a place that was initially driven by, like a competition thing.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't think that can sustain you.
Yeah.
Like, I think sports people talk about this all the time, where I watch a lot of MMA, mixed martial arts, like UFC stuff, and a lot of fighters try and put themselves in the underdog position. Even if they're not, they'll try and put themselves there because that's what fuels them.
Absolutely.
So I have fed off that in the past.
Yeah, well, I think it's like... I think that's always a slippery slope.
Yes.
You know? Like I mean, I equate it to like a Star Wars metaphor where it's like the dark side and light side.
Yeah.
You know, the dark side is the passionate, crazy, not crazy, but like the passionate, hyper-competitive, almost like, I guess crazy to a degree. You know, there has to be winners and losers, you know, and the light side is like not putting too much pressure on yourself, but still being disciplined.
Right,
and, you know, comparing yourself to yourself yesterday rather than other people, you know?
Right. See, that's what I do now. And by the way, I've never seen Star Wars, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I've seen episodes 1, 2, and 3.
I think that counts.
Okay, yeah.
Star Wars.
Okay.
You know what Star Wars is? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I know that Luke is Darth Vader's son.
Spoiler.
But no, you're right. Like that, the thing you ended on there, the whole comparing yourself to yesterday. That's what I do now, and it just brings you way more peace.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think Lord of the Rings is probably another. Have you seen Lord of the Rings?
I've seen that, yeah.
Okay, well, it's like the One Ring, you know, it's like I think the metaphor of that is like, do you cheat and steal and overpower people to get what you want, or do you, like give up that way of, it's easier to do it that way, but you give up that way to do it in a purer way. You know?
Right. Yeah.
And potentially get less clout or less fame or less money as a result.
Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about the unfortunate aspects of social media, because I think it fuels competition.
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, like I just talked about having peace, kind of, but I was talking to you about this yesterday. I still look at people whose stuff like takes off and they get 100,000 views in a couple of days, and I'm like, fuck that person. How come my videos don't do that? Right. My videos do well, but they don't do like that.
Yeah.
And so I still have that, and I think social media has imparted a big challenge to young artists.
Absolutely.
And I do not envy them, because I'm lucky. When I started when I was 19, that was 2001. Right. There was no social media. Like, you still had the internet, but the competition sense wasn't there yet, really. Like, for me, I wasn't looking at other people's, like other peers' art like you do now on social media. I was looking at like the current greats, like people like Paul Dessain from Disney, or Armand Serrano, the people who have already like fully made it.
Craig Mullins.
Yeah, Craig Mullins, stuff like that, where I'm like, oh, okay, that's the top of the mountain. Right. Whereas now, you're not really looking at the top of the mountain so much. You're looking at the people around you, and you're looking like, oh, this guy or girl is better than me, and like that makes you feel worse because they're your peer. Right. Whereas if you're looking at the top of the mountain, of course they're better than you, like they're supposed to be. Right. But it feels a lot worse when your peer is better than you. Yeah. So I think that's a huge challenge that people have to face.
And I think that like kind of what we were talking about earlier, where I think like the reason I think you're able to make YouTube videos and like have that lack of fear when it comes to putting yourself out there is because with your YouTube videos, like when you're making them, you're not necessarily comparing. You're not thinking about other people.
Right.
You're not necessarily afraid of that. And I think social media enforces that sort of thinking in a lot of people. It's like an unhealthy competition. It's like you can quantify how good somebody's art is based on how many followers or likes they have.
Right. It's false, but you can do it.
That's like a logical. Right. Oh, that person has 500 million followers. Of course, they're better than me. Yeah. Even though that's not true, I don't believe that.
No. But we were talking again yesterday about that, where it's really who you cater to in the market. Like, you had a good thing where, you know, if some young kid is just wanting to be is just starting to be interested in art, they're not going to find Proco or me first. Yeah. They're going to find Draw with Jazza.
Yeah.
Or what's that guy's name? ZHC. They're going to find them first because they are the most general, entertaining thing. And then you dig down from there and you find Proco. Yeah. And then you might find me, and you might, you know, find Aaron Blaze or whoever. So it's the followership is more about who you appeal to. And that is, I mean, you can control that to a degree, but it's so much based on your personality. Like, I couldn't do what ZHC, is that his name?
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. Like, you know, paint an iPhone in 1 minute. Like, I'm not doing that. Yeah. But if I did do that, I'd probably get 1 million views.
Yeah.
But my personality is more like, I'm more interested in education, really. I want to understand what I'm doing as an artist, and to the degree that I think it's successful, and I want to show others, like, hey, I learned this, you can learn it, and here's what it is.
Absolutely.
You know, and I want to put my own spin on it. That's in the delivery, but that's what I want to do. I don't want to just put out some like zappy video that's gonna like be clickbaity or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I think both people have their place, and you know, and I think ZHC does like do a lot of good for the art community, where he like introduces people to art in a way they might have not been exposed to otherwise.
Absolutely.
And again, it increases. It's like he's the first stage of the funnel,
right? Which
funnel's now eventually down to you and Stan. And, you know.
And for sure, there's so much like value there because he has like a cool image. Yeah. And I know when I was younger, I thought like a good artist was like snooty for some reason. Like, to be good, you had to like, you know, have your nose in the air and know all these things. But it's like, you see people like that. I'm sorry, I have to sneeze maybe.
All good.
You see people like that, and they're like, oh, it's just like this cool guy who looks like one of my friends, but he's doing all this cool stuff.
Absolutely. Well, and it's like, again, going back to the communication stuff, like, I mean, he did draw a lot in his past, but he found that he could say what he wants to say by doing these videos.
Right.
And it just happens to resonate with, you know, 20 million people or something, you know?
Yeah. And that's, like you said, that's the art.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's, I struggle with a certain form of nihilism, I think, where it's like, I think that on a cosmic scale, like an ant building an anthill is the same thing as us building a YouTube channel.
Okay.
On a cosmic scale, it doesn't matter.
I agree.
It's equivalent. It's the same thing. And I think the logical point of that is like, whether somebody getting 20 million views per video or 100,000 or 10,000 or 500 views, it's all relatively the same relative to the rest of the universe. You know? On a scale, on the scale point of view.
On a large enough scale, it all looks the same.
Yeah, I think it's like the story I've been repeating to people is like, I was in a dog park once recently, and I was watching dogs play with sticks.
Yeah.
You know? And if you see a dog play with a stick, it's the most meaningful thing to any living being in that moment.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I think it's like, that's the goal, is to like be so caught up in this thing that is ultimate, like logically meaningless.
Yeah.
That you're not worried about, you know, the dog that is playing with the stick better or something.
Right. Yeah. You know, I can reconcile with that view. I agree with that view, if I'm just quickly responding there. I agree with that. I definitely, like, when I create something, it's less, it creates meaning for me to do that. Like, for me, art is the dog stick.
Yeah.
But, so creating art for me is less about fulfilling anything as it is just like, that's what I have to do. Yeah. Like a dog with a stick, like, I need to chew on that stick for me to be me. If I don't, you can ask my wife this, I get cagey and quick-tempered, and like I need to do that as a release.
Right.
Also, just being human, I think we all have this. We all feel the need to communicate our ideas, whether you do it on a YouTube channel or whatever. And that's what art gives you an outlet to do. Like, all my friends I have a ton of most of my friends are not artists. I don't know if that's unique with artists or not, but most of my friends are not artists. But all of them have ideas and communicate their ideas in some way. Yeah. Some of them do it with just speaking. Some of them do it over text message. Some of them whatever. I do it with art. I also do it with speaking, but I do it with art primarily. That's what my chosen outlet. But we all have that same compulsion.
Yeah.
So art satisfies two things. It's me just biting on that stick, but also satisfying the very human element that we all have of telling people our ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
About life. And that's why it's cool to meet you, Christian, because you seem like ebullient with your ideas on life, and it's cool to hear them.
Yeah, well, again, I appreciate it. And I think, traveling the way that I've been traveling, it's and meeting the amount of people I've met, just, I really believe that there are fundamental problems that everyone deals with. It's insecurity. It's like there's somebody that looks at you and he's resentful towards you because he's
hilarious.
It's like, oh, that guy's getting X amount of more than me. It's like, and it's like, I should do that. And it's like it's just strange how the human brain works.
Yeah, you know? It's that competition thing that's can be good, but
I think it's part of the human condition is to like no matter like 200 years ago, if we were to be humans in the living, like we would be farmers and we would die at 35.
Right.
And it's like the fact that we, we're not going to die at 35 and we don't have to worry about polio. We don't have to worry about our kids, whatever, It's like, that's a miracle. We should be incredibly thankful for that to the point where we should never complain,
Yes.
We should have nothing that makes us anxious. But the human brain does something where it always finds a problem to solve. It always finds something to be insecure about.
Yep. That's the insidious nature of depression, really, which, sorry, I was going to go on a wild tangent. I'm not going to do that. But, yeah, there is always something to be... It's like striving towards something good, and like anything else, it can be two sides of the sword, right? Like on one side, it sucks that you can never really, at least I can't. I've never really been able to just stand where I'm at and be like, you know what, this kicks ass.
Yeah.
Never really. Maybe a moment here and there where things just felt right, but it always gets replaced with like what's next, right? And that's kind of a bummer. But at the same time,
well, it's great though. I think it
drives you.
You always have something to do.
Yeah, you have something to do. Yeah.
And I think it's like I think every time I've been depressed in my life, not in a good place, it's always because I've like tried to deny that part of myself. I think that
which part? Sorry.
The desire, the want to always look towards the next thing.
Oh, okay.
I think that's just an inbuilt human thing.
Yeah.
And it's like. Like even if you had 10 million subscribers, you would be thinking about the next thing. It's like, even if you're the biggest YouTuber, you're like, how do I make my own version of YouTube?
Right.
It's like, it's like there's always like if you're YouTube, you're like, I'm just one website out of millions.
Right.
It's like that. There's always another thing to strive for, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the human spirit is that like you're destined to create stuff. You're destined to keep trying things.
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing that makes me less depressed is like acknowledging that I'll never be finished.
Right. Everything's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And it can change. Like the goals you set today may not be there 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I know that's true for me. Like I got into art wanting to be an animator. I wanted my holy grail was Pixar.
Yeah.
And like I'm like that's where I'm going. Pixar, straight line from here to Pixar.
Yeah.
But that changed. I discovered that I liked painting better than animation, and I all but gave up animation. Ironically, I'm actually just kind of reintroducing it into my life now, just doing little hobbies, animation stuff, getting exercising the muscles there. But coming to peace with the fact that probably your idea of the world will change, and therefore that'll drive you to change too.
Absolutely.
What your goals are.
Well, and a couple things. Like, I mean, I wanted to be a concept artist, and technically I failed at that. But as a result of pursuing concept art, I found I love art in general. I love traditional art. I love talking about it. It's given me some like a way to find meaning in the world, which in another sense is like that's actually not a failure at all. That's actually way more of a success than just being a concept artist.
Way more valuable, yeah.
And I think Stan had a really similar trajectory where he wanted to work at Pixar.
Did he? Yeah.
And then he applied to one of the famous animation colleges. I can't remember which one.
Okay.
CalArts.
Yeah, CalArts.
He applied to CalArts with a bunch of Bridgman studies, and they said no.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do they want?
They wanted animations.
I applied to animation school too. Didn't get in.
Well, and maybe it's just I don't know. But
wait, sorry, but Bridgman would have helped me though, because that I applied to Sheridan College, which is a very popular school, even in America. People know Sheridan College. They wanted life drawing portfolio, which I didn't have.
Yeah.
So like they gave you the portfolio requirements, and I couldn't do it because I couldn't draw all that stuff. I actually did submit animation stuff, and they wouldn't take it. Anyway, sorry.
Well, and I think it's the reason I mentioned that is because like is Stan a failure? Are you a failure? No, not at all.
Like you find it's that thing like failure. It's like we almost shouldn't be using that word because like it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like so in a way, I am a failure, but it's not bad because I didn't become an animator. So if you were to look at the world in black and white, I wanted to be an animator. I'm not an animator, so I failed. But it's that whole wall thing. I hit a wall and I went that way, and that led to a success.
Absolutely.
So like if you find in the moment, failure feels bad because you didn't get to where you want to go, but in 10 years from then, if that failure was a step in the way to help propel you to success, was that really a failure?
Yeah.
I would say no.
Not at all.
Not at all.
And I think the reason anyone ever sees what their actions are as failures is because they don't treat themselves that well. They don't think of themselves that way. It's or they think of getting that specific job or being in that specific relationship or doing that specific piece of artwork is the only way that they'll ever be validated and be successful.
Right. Yeah.
Which again, I think it's that's a horrible way to live.
And unfortunately, a lot of people's families impose that on their kids. I hear so many stories from my students about their parents saying things like, you hear it all the time, like they don't want their kid to be an artist because they don't think there's money in it, even though there is. Like today, there's more money in art than there ever has been, or something like that. But people want their kids to be doctors, and the classic shit, right? And while I think it's great to be, my brother's a lawyer, I have friends who are doctors, and I think it's awesome. It's certainly not the only way to live, that's for sure. And to live well too. Like if I wish people would know that art can be a great way of making an income.
Absolutely.
But and this is this is totally tangent, but it's related to the podcast, I guess. You should never get into art. And you said this yesterday, thinking that that's going to be your income. That's never why you should start. Yeah. You should start because you have a driving need. You're a dog with the stick. You have a driving need to bite that stick. Yeah. That's why you should start.
Right.
If you don't feel that, probably you should rethink your path, or at the very least, pursue art as maybe a hobby, but definitely don't quit your job and think okay, I now have all this pressure on me to get income from art. Don't do that.
I hear all the time, it's like students have 2 years to... I've saved up all this money, or my parents are giving me 1 year to go and do this, and
that gives me anxiety.
And it's over the past couple of years, I've stopped doing art as much because art became a place of extreme anxiety.
Right.
I didn't trust myself when I was doing it. I didn't trust my motives, and it was ultimately, we were just talking about this. It was something that you could pay me money to stop doing.
Right. Yeah.
It's if you gave me $10 million, I'd be like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna go do what I really want now. It's oh man, I could go travel.
Right. And for me, and that's a good way to evaluate it. Could someone pay you enough money to stop? Yeah. For me, I don't think so. Yeah. Now the answer could be different if I were destitute. Maybe then you could, but I'm doing all right. No, you probably couldn't pay me enough money to stop doing art, because everything I do, every hobby I have, I should say, is some kind of creative outlet. I like drawing, obviously, and painting. I like woodworking. I like sculpting. Those are my hobbies. Writing. Yeah. Those are my hobbies, and that's all creative. Everything in there is the same to me because it's all putting out your message in different mediums. And you could not pay me, if you paid me to stop drawing, I would become a full-time writer. Or musician. Or a musician. Yeah, that's another thing. I like music too. I'd be a sculptor, I would just switch to my other creative outlets. Drawing happens to be my favorite one. Drawing/painting happens to be my favorite one because that's, I guess, what I'm most proficient at. It's what I put the most time into. I find the most satisfaction in it. But I also love all the other ones too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it's it's not necessarily the only reason you're doing that and not the other ones is because you're better at it.
Right. I started that first,
and you could say what you want with more confidence.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's
actually. Well, sorry. Let me just interrupt you there because I face people have artist block or anxiety and stuff. Yeah. When it comes to drawing and painting, I don't. I've never faced that, thankfully. But I have experienced it, and to this day, I just recently bought a VR system, the Oculus Quest, which I got to show you when we get back. Yeah. Have you used it before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I got to show you.
Sick.
So I bought an Oculus Quest because I wanted to do art in 3D space. You can actually sculpt things and move things. And I faced this weird feeling. It's anxiety, or I guess it's anxiety. Maybe you can tell me what it is. It's guilt. When I put on my VR set and I'm playing around in 3D art land, I feel like I'm wasting my time because I don't have a use for it. Right. Because I have all these other ways of creating that are perfectly fine, I'm proficient in. I put on the VR set, and I'm struggling my way through this, and I'm like, why am I even doing this? Like, I have other ways of satisfying this hunger. Right. Why am I doing this in VR? And I feel this guilt. And it sucks because I would love to just put on that VR headset and spend the next 10 hours in VR.
Yeah, be the dog with a stick.
Yeah, but I can't find the stick with that medium. And it's so weird. And even things like sculpting with clay, I do it occasionally, but I can only do it when I can't do other things. Like, for example, I only sculpt with clay when I'm at the cottage.
Right.
Because when I'm at the cottage, I want to be social with my friends. And usually people are like, knitting or just chatting, or we're all in the same living room. I can sculpt there because I can also participate in the conversation. Like if I brought a computer, that'd be weird. But at home, I don't sculpt with clay because I'm like, I'm better at painting. Why am I not just painting or planning a YouTube video? Because those are things to me that have like an end, like the means to an end. So I face a weird problem there where I never really have anxiety over the act of creating something. I've done it for so long. Like I feel like I know the ropes of what creativity is and I can navigate it. But when it comes to the problem I have is things for me tend to need an end. Yeah. Like I'm writing the script for a YouTube video. Right. Which then gets an audience. Right. I'm doing this painting for a YouTube video or for Instagram. Yeah. So that's a problem I have now. The only time I really truly paint for myself and no one sees it is when I'm out plein air painting. Right. I mean, sometimes I'll share them, but most of the time I'm just happy to be out there painting.
Absolutely.
But I guess the problem I face is, things do need to feel like they have an end goal.
Well, I think it's a bunch of things to unwrap in that. I mean, the first thing is you're a father now.
Yeah.
It's like your YouTube videos, your paintings, your images, they help provide for your kids.
Yes. Yeah.
That's actually way more true than VR or sculpting in clay.
Yeah.
So there's that biological association there.
You're totally right about that.
Was that good?
No, before the kid, it was my wife. Like, my wife brings in a good income. She's a business person working in insurance, and I feel the need to do the same. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Well, and I think your brain is incredibly complicated.
Oh, thank you.
Your brain specifically.
Yeah, mine.
It's the most complicated.
Not yours, mine.
Yeah, your brain. Well, have you read anything about split brain studies?
No, what's that?
The brain is two different people, essentially. Like in a scientific sense, it's like you're two different people. Where it's like they did the study where on I think Alzheimer's patients or patients with Tourette's, they literally cut the brain in half.
Oh shit!
So they couldn't,
connect the two hemispheres.
Yeah, but I mean, the person was still alive, but they cut the brain in half, so the two halves of the brain couldn't communicate, and as a result, they couldn't overlap, so they couldn't misfire in the way that the disease was caused.
Okay.
But the result of that was the people started experiencing weird personality disorders. Where if you show. I'm going to butcher the study, but they showed one eye, like the eye associated with one part of the brain, one thing, and and they asked the other eye, the other brain, what they saw, and they'd flash it for like a quarter of a second or something.
Okay. And both eyes saw it.
Yeah, both eyes. I think so. But essentially, it's like the conscious brain would be like, I didn't see anything. But then the part of the brain that controls your hands would be like, it would always point to the correct thing.
No way. Wow.
And it's like, thinking about it that way, it's like the metaphor I've heard to explain the human brain is like a rider on an elephant, where ultimately the elephant is going to do whatever it wants. Like if you're super hungry, it's going to point you towards food and not art,
Yeah.
Or if you're super horny, you're going to go in that direction. If you're super thirsty, whatever, And it's like, all you can do as a conscious person is influence the elephant in some small way,
Like the direction it's going to walk.
Yeah. Okay. And it's like, just by you building your life around art, and having all these biological associations with the creativity you do, I suspect that it's easier to get yourself to do those things because more of the elephant is satisfied by doing those things than...
I'm stuck on the elephant thing. So I'm on the elephant, and I'm guiding him to water because I'm thirsty.
Yeah. Well, so essentially, the elephant, the elephant wants to do, the elephant's going to do whatever it's going to do.
Whatever it wants to do.
You can't overpower an elephant.
Oh, okay. So that's the negative of being on the elephant. Okay, got it. Sorry, I was slow on that one.
Well, and it's like,
I was like, what is the elephant bringing to this analogy? Okay, now I get it.
Yeah, you just can't overpower an elephant.
Yeah, okay.
It's like you can like smack it and tell it to do stuff.
Right.
You can like feed it and be like, go that way,
Right.
But you really can't tell it to do. You can't like.
Yes.
You have this ideal in your brain of like, I want to be somebody who runs 10 miles a day.
Yeah.
I want to be somebody who reads 50 books a month or something.
Yes. Yeah.
But you can't like. You can think of that logically, but you can't reconstruct yourself in that.
Right. Like will it into existence.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I agree. Now, that's really a fascinating thing because I fully have come to terms with the idea that you're born with a certain personality.
Yeah.
And that dictates a lot about what you will and won't be able to do.
Yeah.
And I see it like, at first that was just a theory I had. It's just observing people and being a person myself. Like, I don't remember developing my personality. I feel like I've always been a certain way. Yeah. Like, I've always been an introvert. I've always been that. And I'm still that today. I can disguise myself and go to a party and be cool, but, like, at the end of the day, I want to go in my hotel room alone.
Right.
And just seeing my daughter, who's now 2, like, her personality was always there. Like, the first little shreds of it started to come out when she was maybe a few months old. Like, she starts doing little things I can't even describe. They're so small. And those things have just grown and grown. Yeah. And now she's doing things that are much bigger, but I could see that I could trace them back.
Yeah.
And so, I believe, just from my limited experience on this earth, that we're all born with a personality, and you can't change it. Yeah. You can work on it and understand, like, really what I mean by work on it is you can understand yourself, which no one inherently does. I think you have to really work on yourself to understand who you are and all that entails, like we already talked about, your strengths, weaknesses, whatever, and how you respond to different things. And if you respond negatively to something, does that mean you will always? Well, maybe not. Like, maybe you can spin it and you can anticipate it and you'd be like, it's like thinking of someone throwing a punch at you. If you know the punch is coming, you might be able to slip it, but you can't stop the fact that punch is coming, right? So it's like, if, for example, one thing that I suck at in life is if I have a plan for the day and someone else's plan overrides mine. This happened, I'll give you a very banal example. Like, for example, I wanted to go paint. Like, this happened a few months ago, I remember. I wanted to go paint. But something came up, and I had to, like, go pick up my daughter from school. And, like, that threw me off. Because I'm like, fuck, I spent the whole day looking forward to this painting thing. And I love my daughter, but, like, now I gotta go pick her up, and I can't paint? Like, that throws me off. I'm not good at that. So, I know, like, just in my head now, if I have something, like, I can see the trajectory of it. If I have something planned that I'm looking forward to, I'll be ready for something to come and throw me off, and I'll try and, like, control myself. Because you don't want to be the person throwing tantrums on the street because you don't get your way.
Absolutely.
But I believe, and maybe you can chime in on it because I've been talking for a while, but I believe that you're born a certain way, and all you can do is understand yourself and steer the elephant, I guess.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, the thing that I believe is, I don't know if I believe in free will.
Okay.
Because I don't, like, for example, do you think you would value art or even working at Pixar if you were born in South Africa or in the middle of Africa? Do you think you even have the ability to pursue that as an option?
Possibly not.
And it's like, how much of who you are is based on your genetics, the people that you're around, your race, your gender. It's like so many of things that you value and consider part of your personality were completely out of your control. I mean, theoretically, we can go and fly to China right now. But we're not going to, because that's completely against the things that we value. Or we can, like, go and start trying to pursue becoming investment bankers or working in big pharma, or but we're not going to, because we value just completely different things.
Okay. I'm following you.
And at a certain point, it's like, there's a side of me that knows exactly who I am, and then there's the conscious side of me that's, like, trying to figure out who that is. And that's
why you're on this trip.
That's why I'm on this trip. It's like, how would I respond if I had nothing? If I'd lived in this 20 square foot space,
Yeah, and you see, like, I hope, I'm here, I see the van. I'm in the van. I can see what your life, physical-wise, is. And it's awesome. Like, it's so cool that you're doing this. And I feel like you are doing a more extreme version of what, I guess many people do. Like, I have learned to understand myself in certain ways, but I've never done anything this extreme. And it's super admirable that you are doing that.
Thank you.
Like, I would I will continue to follow your journey because I want to know how it goes, not how it ends, because that will take 80 years. Yeah. I want to know how it's going, you know? Yeah. And this podcast is thankfully a good record of that.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's like, I mean, when people say go and know yourself, it sounds like a corny, cliche thing. It's like, I already know myself, you know? But like, it's more of like, how do you think you would react in an environment where you don't know anybody, where you don't have any friends? Where, or what if you're in an environment where, like, you're suddenly super rich and famous? Do you know how you would react exactly? You know, if the answer is no, then you actually don't know yourself.
And I guess, and because things change all the time, you never, you're always answering that question. Like, when I had a kid, my life changed. Yeah. Suddenly I'm a father. Like, I had a literal change of identity. Yeah. I'm now a dad. Right. How does Dad Marco look?
Well, and you essentially become a different person.
You do.
Because you value completely different things.
Yes. Like, my daughter flipped my life upside down. Like, when my daughter came into my life, art was no longer the thing I value most. Right. Even, and I'll tell my wife knows this, my wife is equal to art. Yeah. But nothing has been able to surpass art except my daughter. Yeah. And now that she's surpassed it, like, I'm about to cry right now. How do I live? Like, how do I reclassify art now that art is number 2?
Yeah, well, I saw it in Stan, where, like, he has enough resources and time to paint as much as he'd ever want to paint. Right. But I saw that he likes spending time with his son and daughter way more than he likes painting.
That's awesome, man. It's so cool to hear that.
Well, and I was like, wow, that's like, you know, maybe painting is not the final result. Maybe that's not everyone's life goal that everyone says it is. Maybe it's something deeper.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's okay to be okay with that, you know?
Yeah, like, for the thing that it's been hard for me is to reconcile what that means for my output, because my whole life, even after I got married, I assigned value to myself based on my output, which is why I feel guilty when I'm in VR, because it's not really outputting much. Right. It's playing with the stick, but I don't feel like anyway, I already went over that. My output is less because I have my daughter. Yeah. Now, I have zero resentment toward my daughter for that, but the reality is I'm outputting less. So I have struggled in coming to terms with that, making peace with that. I think I have now, but even sometimes today, where I'm like, my wife and I will kind of reminisce. We'll be sitting on the couch after a long day, you know, playing with Evie, and being like, you know, remember what it was like when you'd have kids? And I feel like every parent has those moments where, like, we were so free and we didn't know it. Right. You didn't know it. And not to turn this into a parenting diatribe, but, like, it's been a weird 2 years for me figuring out how I can still feel satisfied with the art, because I still have a burning desire to do it. Right. Yet I can't do it nearly as much as I could before.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's part of the darker side of the art community that I've observed, is that a big part of people's own personal value is tied to their output.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is like, you know, what happens if you actually can't post on Instagram every day, and that's your entire identity? You know, you spent 20 years building this following, and now you actually don't have the time to, because you have this other pull, this other thing. Yeah. And I think it's like, that might tear you apart, you know?
It could, absolutely.
Because it's like, it sounds awesome to have hundreds of thousands of people telling you're awesome all the time. You know? Sounds really neat, you know?
But I consider myself lucky that I didn't come up in the age of Instagram. Like, I started serious study of art in 2001. Yeah. Like, YouTube wasn't even around until 2005, I think it was. Was that YouTube? So, like, let alone Facebook and Instagram, and let alone the art community we know now. So when I started, I am so thankful that I started at a time where I didn't have that innate false desire, really, like something imposing itself on my life that I had to contribute to, like Instagram and social media, because I don't know how well I would do with that. Anyway, sorry, I think we've covered that already, so I'm repeating myself.
Well, no, I think that's part of the, like, I think everyone is actually fundamentally trying to solve the same problems.
Yeah.
It's like everyone just wants to feel validated in what they do.
Yeah, and that feels great, yeah.
Whether you're a student or a CEO or you know, running Pixar or whatever, you know, it's like everyone just wants to, like, you know, be approved by other people. You know? Right. And I think the problem necessarily isn't that desire, it's how people go about it. Whether it's like doing heroin is definitely the wrong way to do it. You know, it's like, I don't think that's, you know.
Yeah. Well, there'd probably be people who disagree with you on that one. Yeah, I'm not one of them. But
but I also, like, I might be wrong. You know?
Yeah, maybe that's the undiscovered thing.
Yeah, maybe I'm meant to do heroin. But again, I don't know. That's been another strange thing, just traveling around so much, is just seeing how there is no incorrect way of living, you know?
Sometimes I wonder if, you just stirred a thought, I wonder if some people love drugs and being high for that reason, because it temporarily creates the sense that maybe you've reached it.
Absolutely, I think that's true.
I mean, I've been drunk off my ass. I've been high. I've done some manner of drugs in my life, and you have that feeling where it's like in that moment you are maybe fully at peace because you feel like you're bulletproof for a bit, and like oh my god, like I love everybody, like I'm so good at doing whatever it is. Maybe that's why people fall down that.
I think it's like drugs are actually a deeply spiritual experience. Like, there's a Friedrich Nietzsche quote. It's beware of unearned wisdom.
Unearned wisdom. I
think that drugs and alcohol are unearned wisdom because you're not putting in any effort.
Right.
But then you're getting all this.
But you're getting this
satisfaction. These dopamine releases. That's from doing no work.
Sounds right to me.
And again, I'm saying that fully knowing I'm not that informed about drugs.
I'm not either.
I've never done drugs ever, really.
I've never done anything past high doses of marijuana. Yeah. Nothing past that.
Yeah, and I think it's like, but obviously people are addicted to heroin. People die from LSD. People die, and it's like there's a reason people do that. And I think in a spiritual sense, they're like becoming closer. It's like they're reaching enlightenment without putting in any of the work.
Yeah. I mean, more and more, the thing that I love to do, and in terms of like, I don't know if enlightenment's quite the right word for me, but the thing that I love to do more and more in understanding myself is whatever task you're doing is try to understand the iterative steps that you're taking to do it. Because, like, for example, making a painting. A painting is not done in one stroke. You build your forms, you build your anatomy, whatever it is. You take a step, and then that step leads to the next step, that step leads to the next step. The thing that I love, and it's a constant challenge creatively, is to control the process so that at each step you minimize the error so that at the end the compound error is less. Because compound error is what kills people. It's like you make an error here at stage 1, but it's only a little one. You make an error at stage 2, it's only a little one. But now you've got this, and the camera's going to see. And then by the end, your error is this. And you know what taught me that? Woodworking. Because you're literally dealing with measurements and little mini errors. And like we made a picture frame last night. There was a time in my woodworking history where I could not have made that picture frame perfectly square on all edges. And you know what happens? 3 of your edges line up and they look great. That last edge takes the brunt of the compound error and it's way off. And woodworking has taught me the value of analyzing or understanding the intricacies of each step and making sure your error is minimal. And then at the end, you can be hopefully satisfied at noticing the lack of a huge compound error. I love keeping stock of that because it makes me feel like I understand what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
And by extension, you feel like you are exercising something in your own brain that you're understanding the world more. Because, like, yeah, art is just art, but if you have the discipline of that, I find, and you can apply it to different things, everything is kind of the same.
Absolutely.
Like, I haven't gotten good at many things in my life, but a few. I've gotten good at art, I think. I've gotten good at one point in my life, exercise, not so much today, but I used to be pretty proficient at things. And I followed, and woodworking is another one I feel like I'm pretty good at. I follow the same steps for those things. And I feel like if I ever wanted to be a swimmer or something, I feel like I know how I could do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would have faith that I could do it. And that, to me, creates kind of like a meaning, a deep meaning that drives me.
Absolutely. Well, and I think we were talking about this, about like Morgan Weisling was saying that a drawing, like a figure drawing, is just a series of
mistakes.
Well, no, but it's also a series of very, very easy decisions.
Okay.
How big is that head relative to that torso? What is that value relative to that value? What is that color relative to that color? And those decisions, if you just have to make that single decision, is very simple to make. Extremely easy. But in the context of everything else around it, it's extremely complicated. And I think here's a Steve Houston quote. I remember he was talking about how, a drawing is just that exactly. It's just a series of simple decisions. And you could tell when somebody is not thinking about their drawing. They're thinking about their job or their girlfriend or whatever. And I think the reason I love actual physical objects of art so much is because it's like a representation of somebody who was completely in the moment, making those simple egoless decisions.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to say it. I totally agree.
Well, and art has taught me, like, that line of thinking can be applied directly to people's lives. It's like, your day consists of 1,000 small decisions. Where it's like, do you wake up at 6 a.m. and go for a run, or do you wake up at noon and eat Oreos,
Sure, exactly. And how you start influences how it ends.
Absolutely, yeah. If you wake up at 6 a.m. and you read a book and exercise and don't look at your phone, you're more likely to have a successful day because you're starting it correctly.
Yeah.
And it's like a domino effect where, in a drawing, if you start a drawing with a giant head, the entire body's going to go off the page.
Yeah, exactly. Morgan Weisling, in his DVD, I love Morgan Weisling. I probably wouldn't be where I am today without Morgan Weisling. Yeah. And he doesn't know this.
I'm going to send this to him.
I just found out that Proco did a video with Morgan, and I'm super excited to see it. Yeah. I love that guy so much. On his DVD, Homework, which was released like 15 years ago, he said that, yes, drawing is a series of simple decisions, but the words he used in that DVD was drawing is a series of disappointments.
Yeah.
And that, to me, relates to my compound error thing, because I don't think anyone can ever be perfect.
Yeah.
You're always... Other people might think you're perfect. Yeah. Like when you look at like Stephen Bauman, you're like, oh, that's a perfect portrait. Right. But like, I don't think he would say that.
No, he wouldn't.
So everyone in their craft or art, whatever, you're going to make mistakes. Yeah. The question is, are you aware when you are making a mistake? Because like you said, you can tell when someone just doesn't even know, then they're just doing something. Or are you the type of person who takes stock of every little thing and then, but is still able to go with the flow? That's the tricky part, because you can't get fixated. If you make a mistake, sometimes it's actually not possible to fix it, but you can maybe control for it a bit. Yeah. And then by the end, you have something that doesn't have that huge error. So
absolutely.
I was doing a mentorship program, and I still do it. I offer semesters every now and then, and it's portfolio reviewed. Like I want to target certain types of students for my mentorship program. And my wife was watching me go through portfolios, and like, a portfolio has like 10 images, right? I would just scroll it like this, like, next. And my wife was like, how could you possibly know? I'm like, I know. Yeah. Because I know what goes into art. Right. And I can tell instantly when I see someone's art, maybe not one piece, maybe a few pieces, I know where your level is. Right. Whether it's better than me or worse than me, like I know where the level is. Right. And I'm looking for, in my mentorship, a certain type of level. It's a very narrow window that I'm looking for. And I told my wife, I'm like, I can't describe to you how I know, but I know, because I know the nature of this. Right. And I can see a brushstroke, and I can know what that artist was doing.
Absolutely.
And I really love people of all disciplines who have that. Like, I love watching my uncle, who's an electrician. Yeah. I love watching him work. He was helping me out with some lights. Right. I love watching him solve a problem, because he's like, you can see the gears turning in ways that I can't do it,
Well, and he might be a better electrician than you are a painter.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that's part of the silly part of all this stuff is, like, they're the glory jobs where, it's like somebody might be a better, like, scaffolding builder.
Right.
Jeff Watts is a painter,
that's an interesting little comparison, like twist. I've never thought of it like that, but yeah.
Well, and I think it's so much of success, personal success is just falling in love with the process and not the final product.
Exactly.
I remember I was reading, do you know The Art Spirit?
Robert Henry,
yeah. In it he talks about, one of the quotes is something like, I'm going to butcher it, but be a master at whatever level that is, where it's like essentially...
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
And it's like I know artists who are complete beginners that draw more confidently than some of the people that I know that have been drawing for 15 years.
Right. Kids do that.
Well, and there's something that's really admirable about that. It's like they're so confident in what they know. Yeah. And I think that's, to me, when adults can do that, that's a lot more admirable than somebody who is just trying to, again, learn their punctuation.
That's exact. I in my creative writing project, I wrote about that exact thing, and I totally agree. Like when you watch a kid draw, it's full confidence. Yeah. They think that what they're drawing is like a perfect representation of whatever it is. Yeah. Like they don't think like, oh, this doesn't really look like a giraffe, but whatever. Right. No, they think that's a fucking giraffe.
That's the best giraffe.
It's the best giraffe that's ever been drawn. Yeah. Like they don't. It's not that they think that, but they don't think otherwise. Yeah. They don't know to think otherwise. Right. And I totally agree with you, Christian. The goal of what you're doing, what we do as artists or whatever you're pursuing, your goal should be to recapture that confidence, because you're born with it, but you're going to lose it. Like, you have to lose it. Like, it's like losing innocence. Like, you have to lose it because you're going to reach a point where you know that your zebra or giraffe is not anatomically accurate or whatever it is. Yeah. And so you work on your fundamentals and whatever. You work on yourself as an artist. You work on your views of the world. And then hopefully, I don't know what age it comes at, different for everyone. You want to circle back to that point where you feel like you can just create that giraffe.
Right. Well, and I think it's like, I guess the reason you're saying it, like, kids are not better artists. They're just less informed.
Exactly,
yeah. And I think it's like, you know, I again, in a biblical sense, like, I'm not religious, I'm not Christian or anything, but I think this metaphor is useful, where, like, the idea of the apple and the Garden of Eden.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like humans, by eating the apple, become aware of good and evil. They become aware of their own consciousness. Where it's like, you know, when a dog goes and murders a rabbit, you don't judge the dog for that, but when a kid goes and does that, you're like, oh, that's, you know,
that's not a good
human
sign.
kids. Like, and it's like, as a result of that, humans have the ability to choose, so that distinction of killing the rabbit or not becomes like, okay, that's good or bad. You know?
Yeah.
And when an adult does that, it's like, when an adult chooses to paint a certain way, it's like, that's good or bad. You know?
Right.
It's brave or not brave, or whatever, you know? And I think as a result, it has a lot more value as a choice.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. So you said, are we good with the camera stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool. Just to back up 30 seconds or so, you said something about, what did you say about kids? You said, oh yeah, kids are, you said they're not, what'd you say? They're not bad artists, or they're just misinformed or something like that?
They're just uninformed.
Naive,
maybe.
So, and I agree with that. But the thing is, the confidence is that's real.
Yeah.
That's actual confidence, genuine confidence. And that's the thing that you want to recapture. Like, when I'm painting, I know I'm doing my best work when I feel like a kid drawing.
Yeah.
But I have all the fundamentals to back it up.
Right.
So I'm like, I know if you stopped me and said, why did you make that brushstroke? I could tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in the moment, I'm not thinking that. I'm just, I'm doing it. I feel like I'm high or something. I'm just going.
Right.
So that's really, it's a weird full circle thing. You want to get back to where you started.
Yeah, I mean, and it's getting to a point where every single choice is intentional. You know, I think that's part of I think that's why representational art is so highly valued, because it's hard. There is a binary element to it, and you're trying to inject that confidence into a binary thing. You know?
Right.
Because no matter who you are, somebody will be like, oh, Stephen Bauman doesn't do good art because he's not doing the kind of art that I like. You know?
Right. Yeah.
You could be doing amazing portraits all the time. Mm-hmm. And I read this in a book about Sargent, where eventually he stopped wanting to do portraits because, like, I think he said, like, every other patron that hired him to do a painting didn't like his paintings.
Which is so crazy.
Which is like, that's one of the greatest portrait painters of all time. Yeah. And every other person didn't like it. Yeah. It's like crazy.
That's so crazy to think.
Yeah.
It's even like when you think about, that happens to me where I'm like, you know, I think of the 90s. I'm like, that was a great decade. Yeah. The 90s was awesome. But, like, you didn't think that in the moment.
No.
I wish I could take a time machine and relive the 90s.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's when I grew up. But I think everyone would have that nostalgia for when they grew up. If you're up in the 80s or the 2000s, they'd probably want to go back there.
Well, and I think, I mean, you know, have you ever seen Midnight in Paris?
No.
Well, it's a movie about how, so Owen Wilson plays the main character, and he plays a writer, like modern day writer writing movies and stuff.
Okay.
And he's in Paris with his wife, who's, like, you know, super materialistic. And Owen Wilson is, like, romanticizing the idea of going back to the 1920s when Fitzgerald and Hemingway and all those guys lived in Paris, and they all had this writing thing together, and he was like, oh, it'd be so cool to go back there and live with those guys. That's the golden age of writing. And then he, like, magically gets teleported back in time, and he's hanging around them, and they're douchebags. You know, total fucking douchebags.
That sounds like a movie I'd want to watch. What's it called?
Midnight in Paris.
Midnight in Paris? I'd never heard of it. Okay.
You can watch it tonight if you like. It's a great movie.
Oh, yeah? We'll see if Renee's up for a movie. We'll see,
and I think it's, like, and then, but they're talking about how, oh, it would be so amazing to go back to the 1800s, you know, and it's like, everyone thinks that, you know, the time that they're living in is, you know.
Yeah. I have tried to, like, reverse that lens and be like, okay, right now, what in 10 years, what will I want to come back to now? And I have answers. My daughter is 2. Like, I'm sure I will die for this moment 10 years from now when my daughter is 12. I'll be like, man, remember when she was 2? I'm sure of it. But it's so, you can't feel that now.
Right.
You can't. It's a nostalgia thing.
Right.
You can't feel nostalgia in the present.
Yeah.
I wish you could.
Well, I mean, it's a, you know, I think that dying and aging and things going away does add value to things in general.
Yeah.
It's like if you just had everything all the time,
right,
it wouldn't necessarily make your life better, you know?
Well, yeah.
It'd be like an ex machina.
Yeah. There's like, the Dorian Gray thing. I mean, there's tons of stories about that.
Yeah,
premise, yeah.
Well, a genie, like the genie story.
Right.
I mean, or Satan, you know?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, in any, like, you give a person exactly what they want and they get it and they're like, my life is meaningless now.
Right,
you know?
right.
And it's like again, I had become a lot more spiritual on this trip, and I think that the problems put in front of you, you shouldn't be so quick to discount them as things that you want to get out of your way as quickly as possible.
Right.
You know? Like, I'm sure you don't like changing diapers, you know?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, if, you know, maybe you might be like, oh, if I could never change a diaper again.
Yeah.
But maybe having a 1-year-old, you have to change diapers. You have no choice.
Right,
that's part of the price of entry.
Right. But no, it's actually a good analogy, because the hidden thing that, I know you're not a parent, so maybe you didn't anticipate this, but the thing that happened, it's cool, you're steering gears in my head, because, like, in a way, it's like, okay, yeah, life would be better if I didn't have to change diapers and take out bags of diapers every Friday to the garbage. But I've become so good at changing diapers that it doesn't even occur to me that I'm changing a diaper.
Yeah.
I just, done. The smell doesn't bother me. The sight doesn't bother me. Like, it's. I wouldn't say it's fun, but it's not even it's like breathing. It's not even a thing that I think about.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe that's what we're trying to do with problems, is not necessarily want to solve them, although we do, but you want to get to the point where they feel like you can deal with them easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, I mean, you always hear these stories of people that are depressed billionaires. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Or, have you ever read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl? Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, and I've heard snippets on YouTube and stuff.
It's a great book, and it's about Viktor Frankl, who was alive during the Holocaust, and he was he wasn't a victim. I mean, he was in Auschwitz as you know, a prisoner, and he was just equating, like, oh, he, you know, his wife died, his family died, and he was talking about how he found meaning in his life in spite of having all this horrible stuff happen to him, you know?
Oh, I gotta read that.
How it's like...
How did he find meaning?
Helping other people,
okay.
You know, and living outside himself and having faith in, you know, just the process of what he was doing. And, like, he was talking about, like, as he's like a scientist, he was, you know, he always believed that, you know, a human can't go for more than 3 days without sleep, and he's like, oh, I have evidence of that being wrong. You know? And it's like,
Jesus.
Or the amount of food that you can behave on, or, you know, the amount of, like, how far your actual limits are a lot further than you think they are. You know, and he was talking about how, you know, it sucked, obviously, and no one should ever have to go through that. Yeah. But humans are adaptable, you know? And you can adapt to them. And the people that didn't, they died. You know, the people that looked at those as like, oh, that's not worth doing. My life is horrible. It's way worse than, you know, they weren't able to handle it, and they were, you know, they grew weak, and they were sent to the gas chambers, you know.
Jesus.
And not to sound super morbid.
Well, yeah, no, I lived in Germany for a few years, and I made a point to. I never visited Auschwitz, but I did visit Dachau and a few other camps.
I've been to Dachau as well.
Oh yeah, and just because the profundity of the events that happened there, and what it. I mean, appreciating the history is one thing, but what you're talking about is like what. Because the people who lived then are no different than you and me. Yeah. We just live now, 100 years later, or more. But the human mind that they had is the same as us.
Less than 100 years. Like 80 years, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I was thinking World War I. Sorry.
No, I'm not saying that to point out you're incorrect. I'm saying that it's like not that long ago.
Right. You know? Yeah. And even if it were 100 years ago, that's not that long ago. No, your point well taken. Sorry. For some reason I was thinking World War I. But my point is, it's you can learn about yourself from learning about the people in those circumstances, and I will put that book on my list of books to read, because I have heard some snippets, but that sounds like a fascinating study, really.
Well, and I think it's I mean, I was in Berlin a few weeks ago, and just like
nice.
I mean, you see these, like, you know, these monuments where, oh, this is where 30 Jews were killed because they were protesting, or this is where Kristallnacht happened, you know, or any of that kind of stuff, and like, those are real things. Those are real things that happened.
Yes.
And people alive experience that, you know?
Yeah. It's easy to think of them as like characters.
Yeah, not that far away. And
Right.
I mean, I'm becoming I'm gaining a lot more empathy when I watch World War II documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer just like, oh, look at that cool bomber. That thing's so badass.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's napalm being sprayed at another person.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Or that bomb is going to land on a family. And it's like, you know, like imagine if like those are people you could know, you know?
Yeah, and because they were to somebody.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's so strange.
It's really unimaginable, yeah. And even though it sounds like we're taking a massive tangent here, but it does relate to understanding yourself through what other people have been through, because you can apply things to yourself. Like if you know that humans are capable of that, which they are, that means you're capable of that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
me. And what circumstances could drive you to go there.
Right.
And then you can scale down from that, make something half as evil, which is still quite evil. What could propel you to get there?
Right.
And, you know, you try and do things that on a smallest scale, like for me, one of the things I try and do that helps my mind be at ease is like cleaning my house.
Yeah.
I'm not the best at it, and having a kid makes it much harder.
Yeah.
But I try and clean my house because if I have a clean house, I feel like I've controlled some chaotic aspect that I'm capable of. That's a very small scale version. I can't believe I'm even saying this. That's a very tiny, minuscule scale from a war.
No, but I think it's actually very important to think of that.
But yeah, it's on the timeline.
Relevant. Yeah.
Or it's on that spectrum.
It gets one step closer if your house is messy. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. You can. Yeah. It's like that internet meme with the dominoes.
Right. Yeah.
Where you put a little one and clean your damn house.
Right.
That's to me is the first thing I can, like if I feel like I don't have time to do anything, like I can't go paint, I can't can't go run for a jog, I'll clean the house or like a room in the house. I'll pick a room and I'll clean it because I feel like I can quickly accomplish and quell some demon inside me that could get loose if I don't.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. Well, actually, he says something about cleaning your room. Right?
Yeah. Cleaning your room. And I mean, I think he's a very controversial person to listen to, but I think he has a lot of good things to say.
Yeah. No, I've read his book, The 12 Rules of Life, and I think that is one of them. I actually didn't learn that from him. I had been doing that, but when I read that, I'm like, oh shit, I do that. Yeah.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. It's like something like the Holocaust doesn't happen because Hitler says it should happen. It happens because of a collective, dropping of the ball.
Yes. And scale increases, and suddenly a bunch of almost logical decisions create something insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like, how do you go from, disagreeing with somebody to killing them? And the answer is like, we're observing it in a certain sense online, where I hate to talk about politics at all, but the way people I know talk about Trump supporters or Biden supporters is weird,
Yeah. I stay out of all that.
Yeah.
And like, we should probably stay out of it here too. But the thing that it is like, for some reason we're wired to like to take a side on things.
Us and them, yeah.
Yeah, and which is all right, but like the problem is when you start vilifying the other side for taking a different stance on things, which hey, I'm as guilty of thinking about things like that as someone else is. But
absolutely.
I guess for me, if I ever feel those things, it's like the internet is a good example because we all have Twitter or whatever.
Right.
When you see someone with values that clearly don't align with yours. Right. It's kind of the S&M thing. I'm here, you're there. And you feel the need. Like, I feel the knee-jerk reaction that I want to type something.
Yeah.
But I don't. I stop myself right there.
Right.
And I just mute that person.
Absolutely.
But I don't let them know I'm mute. I just mute them so I don't ever have to hear from them again. But I certainly don't type anything.
Right.
And same with YouTube. Like, going back to the much safer waters of, YouTube. Yeah. I have a YouTube channel. It's got a fair amount of subscribers and followers. I definitely get... Right. Let's call it hate. I don't know if hate's the right word, but I definitely get asshole comments.
Yeah.
And I make a conscious choice to never respond.
Yeah.
I will respond to constructive criticism, and I'll say thank you to kindness.
Right.
But when it comes to just people trying to tear me down, I just don't respond.
Absolutely.
Because that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah. It's not, you're not going to convince that person.
Exactly.
And you actually can't save them. It's like you just do the best you can. And I mean, we're talking about we've done our own versions of that kind of stuff in the past in a certain way.
Yeah.
They're just being like young, dumb kids.
Oh, sure. Everyone falls for that. Yeah.
Well, and I guess the reason I bring up the political stuff is to make the comparison how I see people, treating different ways of learning art in the same way. It's you know, it's like if you're learning perspective and not figure drawing, or if you're learning, you know, from Scott Robertson and not whoever else.
People like for me, people will. I came up in like kind of an animator's way of learning, which is way less anatomy based and more like gestural and like rhythm and stuff like that, and weight and stuff like that. And I'm no stranger to people being like the atelier way of learning. Yeah, they're like, that's not good because like the atelier way will brainwash you into like only doing it this way. It's the same as relating to politics. Like people who are on the left or the right, the other side is like, brainwashed, idiot. You know, you do it this way, you're wrong. Right. It happens with art too. You're right.
It's
like
really strange.
It's really strange. Like you know, people looking at. I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't Watts Atelier, but I remember someone bad-mouthing some atelier saying, like, look at all of them. They all look the same. Like, yeah, their rendering's good, but it's like they all make the same shit. Right. And these were people that I admired with my way of learning. And I fell into that, too, where I thought, like, my way was better. But not anymore. I still have the values that I have in terms of, like, if I were teaching... Well, I do teach people. When I teach people art, I teach them the way that I was taught because I think that's a good way of learning. But I'm at least smart enough, maybe, is to say, like, hey... And I tell my students, every class I run, I tell my students this. I say, listen, guys, I've had the pleasure of teaching you. Now go seek out someone else. Right. Don't just learn from me. Go to Proco. Because Proco and me are pretty different, actually. Yeah. You know, Proco puts values, no pun intended, in a different place than I do. Yeah. I put my values there too, but where Proco starts is not where I would start. Right. And where I would start is not where Proco would start. Right. But I'm like, go there. Go to Jeff Watts. Go wherever. Learn from other people because that is the only way to achieve a cohesive worldview is seeing what multiple people have to say.
Absolutely.
And which is why, like, you know, people might bristle at like the name Jordan Peterson, right? Right. But it's or any insert name here. But like, why not read that person? Because reading only informs your worldview. You always have the right to disagree with something. Right. You might read Peterson being like, this guy's full of shit. Okay, cool. You might read Robert Henri and be like, this is the best book ever. Cool. You should always read or consume, I think, different worldviews because that's only the way you can make a cohesive decision on anything.
Absolutely. Well, and the way I've been thinking about it is if you know that there's some book that could potentially change the way you think, you should probably read that book. You know? Yeah. And I think if there's a book that you're afraid of, you should probably read that book. You know? Yeah. And I've had friends recommend... I had a friend recommend to me a book about women living in London, you know, transgender women, or, you know, just the female experience living in London. And my initial knee-jerk reaction was that it would be kind of not up my alley. It's something I wouldn't enjoy. And I ended up really loving the book. You know? Oh, well. It was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo.
Well, I don't even know what the hell you do.
Yeah. Girl, Woman, Other.
Oh, yeah. By what?
Everdeen Evaristo. And
that sounded like one big word.
That's the entire. But again, I think it's ironic that art could be this thing that's all just about expression and, you know, like freedom of speech and all this kind of stuff. And people can still feel very particular about the way art is done.
Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, we can beat this horse to death, but like people who... I was watching a video of this guy who was a great artist. I won't say his name, but he was criticized for only drawing like hot girls. Yeah. And he draws them well. Yeah. But 90% of his portfolio is like hot girls. And like people are criticizing him for it, but it's like... Why? Like in my head, I'm like, I would never, even if I noticed that about someone, I would never. I wouldn't even think of it as a negative. I'd be like, oh, this guy just really likes drawing hot girls. But B, I would never criticize him for it. Like, what does it gain you to do that? Like, because I just candidly, once in my life, did I tell you this yesterday? I can't remember. One time in my life, I was a troll. Yeah. I mean... Oh, yeah. Now, I wasn't a troll habitually. I mean, I did it once. I sent a very hateful email one time in my life. I was 19 years old, or 20 years old, or 19, first year in university. Yeah. I remember clearly. And I remember the place that came from. I sent it to a hockey player. Professional hockey player. I sent it to like his organization or something. I can't remember who I emailed. But it was a terrible email. And like my intent was to hurt. Right. And I was behind the anonymity of the keyboard of the internet. And I remember my brain space, my head space in that moment I was feeling insecure because the person I hated was way better than me, more successful. All the things we talked about that I was yearning for, that I thought I wanted to achieve one day, he, in theory, had, because he was a professional hockey player. And I wanted to take out my insecurity on him.
Yeah. Right.
And I did it. And I remember when I sent the email, I actually got a response. Like, the person responded. And the person, you know, was equally harsh to me. Yeah. But I remember reading that email being like, you know what? Fuck. Like, that person's right. Like, I'm an idiot for sending that.
Yeah. Right.
And that day forth, I told myself I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
And now I can't even imagine doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, it's like everyone can get there. I've been there.
Yeah.
You know, in my own way.
Yeah.
I think it's like I can also go back there. You know, and some set of circumstances could happen where I do something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like
that we can all easily get there.
And again, I think that's part of just being a person. You know, there's that biblical quote. It's there goes I, but for the grace of God.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the only thing separating you and, you know, somebody you despise, it might just be a set of circumstances. You know?
Yeah.
You know, going back to the values thing. You know, like if you grew up with, you know, if you grew up addicted to heroin, if you grew up like worried, you know, about if you're going to be murdered at night or something, would you be the person that you are now?
Yeah, definitely not. It would change you. Yeah.
And again, it's complicated. It's really strange. And I think the correct way of looking at all this stuff is that there's no one that's living incorrectly. You know, which is like somebody could be living and doing things that are completely different than you.
Yeah.
They could be living completely valid lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I mean, I say this, you know, as kind of a joke, but also I think it's true. There's like a place for furry porn, you know?
Furry porn?
Yeah, there's a place in New York City.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a place in New York City for, you know, the weirdest shit possible.
Oh, yeah.
And you might have actually taught some of those people, you know?
Oh, I know I have.
Yeah.
I've seen people's erotic art that are my students.
Yeah.
And I've, like, helped critique it.
Yeah, and it's like there's a place for it. You would never do that. And you would never, you wouldn't want to do it, but it's also like they have the right to say that kind of stuff.
Sure, but also like I guess the things that I do, like what's so different than what I do than furry porn? Right. Like it's just my version, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't really paint hot girls that much, but if I did, it'd just be my ideal sexuality thing outlet. I tend to paint more like, I guess, happy scenes, although it's the odd horror stuff, but it's just me exercising my view of the world and what I like.
Well, and somebody might look at furry porn and the things that you do as equally as inappropriate in terms of like, it's like any kind of narrative-based thing is immoral.
Yeah.
You know,
I've been criticized for my horror stuff. Like every October, which is now, I lose myself in the horror world, watch tons of horror movies, and I paint stuff that's dark. Every year. I haven't got it yet this year because I actually haven't done that much painting yet. But every year I get comments or messages from people, like one person a year, who takes issue with me painting horror because they follow me for my lighthearted stuff, which is most of my stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm hitting them with like a zombie biting someone's head off or whatever. And they're like, what the hell are you? Like, what's wrong with you? How could you paint this wholesome picture and then give me this? Right. And I'm like, easy. I'm a person who likes multiple things. Yeah, right. It's an easy answer, man.
Absolutely.
And if you don't like it, just unfollow me.
Yeah.
And then some people push back, like, no, I think you should change. You know, one guy pointed me to like the Bible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I'm like, dude,
that guy.
I grew up in a Christian school. Grades 1 through 8. I went just down the street from here. There's not anymore, but there was a Christian school that I went to. I know the Bible.
Yeah.
I think the horror stuff reconciles perfectly with the Bible.
Absolutely.
As does the wholesome childhood stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, have you not read the Bible? There's a lot of horrific shit in there, man.
Yeah. Horrible stuff. I
perpetrated by God himself.
I saw this Twitter post where somebody was like, you know, do you think Jesus was a boobs or ass man? and then he followed up. The next tweet was like, I know what you're all going to say, but God created humankind and all of the desires that go along with being a human. Yeah. And Jesus was a human man.
Yeah.
So I'm re-asking this question. Do you think Jesus was a boobs or ass man?
That's hilarious. and I'm sure many people didn't like that question.
Yeah. But it's like, I think that's right. You know? It's like,
I mean, I guess to tie that to what we've been the theme of what we've been talking about, if you think of Jesus, what many people would think is like the ultimate ideal of a human person, but the Bible constantly shows that he was a fallible person and he asks forgiveness for his sins, asks people not to judge others for theirs. If Jesus was not immune to that, how are we?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So we just do our best, man. And like all the things we talked about, it's hard to keep all of it in mind. You know, the only reason it's coming up on the surface now is because we're here in your van chatting about it.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And I fall into traps all the time.
Right.
I just try and be the best person I can be, which fails as equal as it succeeds. But
Absolutely. You know, looping back around to the beginning of the conversation, it always comes back to your relationship with failure, you know?
yeah.
Do you see yourself as somebody who's a complete loser and your failure is just not worth doing, or do you see yourself as somebody who's flawed? You know, like like in the biblical sense, like a sinful human being. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I it's weird for me to talk that way because I'm not religious, but I think it's a useful analogy. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Bible's full of parables that you know, from my Christian school upbringing, are still stuck in my head, and a lot of them, have good messages. Just. Clouded with other stuff, unfortunately, that I would rather forget, but you know, some things stick.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, man, that sounds like a natural end.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks,
cool.
man.
Yeah, here.
Oh, yeah. COVID bump. Yeah.
I appreciate you doing this, man.
If Christian's first time, this is his first time in Canada.
First time in Canada.
Can you guys believe that? He's going to take this home. We're going to leave this leaf.
I'm going to pin it on my...
pin it on the board.
How should people follow you? I mean, I don't have that many subscribers.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for listening, first of all. My name is Marco Bucci. You can find me youtube.com/Marco Bucci, Instagram, Bucci blog. Those are my two main outlets.
Nice. Cool. Alrighty, man.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Christian.
I will cut that.
Bye, guys.